you for joining us today. Just to reiterate, if you can pop yourselves on mute and keep yourselves on mute throughout, that would be much appreciated. We have only one speaker today, who is Peter Holland, who I will introduce to you in just a moment. If you want to ask questions throughout, there is a chat function available. If you want to pop the questions into that chat, then at the end we will do a Q&A session, and I will read them through there. I know that some people have had problems in the past accessing that, so if you have got a question, make a note of it, and then at the end, the other alternative is you can unmute yourself and ask your question directly. So welcome very much to this morning webinar on digital sales for life, not lockdown. This was born out of a conversation we've had with a couple of members, some exhibitors from MAC, and a link we've had with Linear Structures for a while. Just talking about what we can do in the interim. So between exhibitions or between physical events taking place, what can you do to interact with customers and keep that, in inverted commas, face-to-face going? And so that conversation has turned into today's webinar. Today is very much a kind of top-level overview of some different things you can do in the new digital format and the life that we're all now used to living. What I would say is if you think there are key areas we cover in this or that Peter touches on that would be really beneficial to look into deeper, please let us know either at the end, you can email me directly, or through the feedback form, and we can look at putting on a follow-up session that covers those specific areas. So no one else wants to hear me which one any longer, so I will pass you over now to Peter from Linear Structures. Peter works as a consultant, coach and trainer, and is committed to helping sales leaders develop and their teams maximize performance to create consistent results. Today he's going to share some of the impactful strategies and effective tactics you can implement to transform your virtual selling approach and results over the next year. So Peter, over to you.
All right. Good morning, James, and everybody on the call today. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you about the transformation that's taking place right now in terms of sales and digital selling and all of these interesting topics. So let me go ahead and first of all say that one of the reasons that I wanted to start this business, Linear Structure, about 12 years ago now, was really to help teams, sales leaders and their teams to collaborate better, to get better alignment, to enable us to achieve the results that very often we talk about in the boardroom, but sometimes don't actually transpire with the activities that we're doing, on the ground day to day. So it's very much about looking at overall strategy, but then actually what can we do today, tomorrow to make that really happen and have an impact. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to do a screen share with you today, and we'll just open up the this PowerPoint here. Great. Okay. So thinking about this this situation that we're in now, you don't need me to talk to you about the seismic changes that have happened over the last year. It's been massive for every single one of us, and probably the sales department have been maybe more impacted than anybody else with all of the changes that are going on. And up until now, I think it's fair to say that maybe some people have thought, well, maybe I'll just wait and see how things turn out, whether they kind of come back to normal or not. But I think it's fair to say that the change is inevitable, and it's one that you can benefit from. It's not all bad news. There's a huge opportunity for people who want to look at this, invest some time and energy in it, and really excel at it. So this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some overall ideas and strategies that you can implement into the business, but also some practical aspects that you can do, really tomorrow to start to improve the connection. And having a chat with James, I know that very often there's a big lag time between the big exhibitions, and what I'm really interested in is seeing how we can really add value in between these periods of time, so that you are enabling yourselves to interact and engage with customers and maybe get them a lot closer to making a decision than, say, waiting for face-to-face events. We'll see how we can do that. So let's dive in and have a look at this together. And first of all, I thought it would be good to maybe look at a couple of statistics from a recent Gartner report on the future of sales. Now, as you can see there, it said that 80% of business-to-business sales interactions between suppliers and buyers would be in a digital format by sort of 2025. Now, that may or may not happen. That's a prediction, right? So we don't know if that's going to be the case or not. And it's certainly not a case of chucking out all of your effective sales strategies and things that you've done in the past that have brought success. But even if we take that result and think about the impact of it, there's going to be some significant change. We're not going to go back to 2019, and I would like to make the case that we shouldn't go back, because this new way of working actually affords us some real lessons that we can learn. So the other statistic there is quite interesting. It says that 77% of business-to-business buyers don't see sellers as a resource to solve their business problems. Now, that was in a Korn Ferry study in March 2020. And that is really thought-provoking as well, isn't it? It's asking us, why don't they see the value? What is it that we're not doing as maybe salespeople and sales leaders that we need to do to make them feel the value of our interactions? So that's what we're going to focus on. What we're actually seeing is this kind of raising of the bar. So maybe sort of prior to March 2020, you know, few people were really very good at virtual selling. You may have done it if you were part of a global corporation or large distances, but in the main, most of the work was done face to face. So when COVID hit, almost overnight, we had to transform into this kind of virtual sales world. And what we're seeing now is a separation of skills between the people that are not particularly good at this and the ones that are excelling. And the ones that are excelling and are adopting and investing time and energy in this are really creating outstanding experiences for customers. And as we move forward, it's a real opportunity for competitive advantage. So we want to look at, obviously there's some cons with this kind of work, and it will probably never replace face-to-face for many of us, but there are significant advantages. So we want to look at what those are and how to use them. So to start off, I thought, let's see if we could come up with a definition. You hear a lot about virtual selling, digital selling, but what does that really mean to you and me? Well, I'll try to encapsulate it in just a few lines here with a simple definition for you. I've said that digital selling is a process of understanding your customer's mindset to the purchase. Okay, that allows you then to engage with them, maybe via social media, using digital tools, but to demonstrate your value. This is absolutely critical, and help you to be much more aware of all of the opportunities that are out there that you otherwise wouldn't really know about. But with that in mind, there is actually a starting point here that many people are missing. And the starting point is that they are ignoring the main driver of virtual selling, indeed any sales activity, and that has to be, what is in your customer's mind? How do they think and feel about making this decision, as they even prior to making a decision to purchase, just thinking about the challenges and the issues that they've got. So what should be your focus? Well, it's not about your products or your services, okay? You have to focus on what are the desires, concerns, and maybe specific questions that your buyers have, okay? Just put yourself in their position for a minute. So if you go out to purchase something, You know, you've got a desire, an objective, whatever it is you want to purchase, especially if it's a higher value item. As I know many of you, working with capital equipment, it's a big decision. So in your mind, think about something that you're personally going to purchase. You've got that desire, but almost married to that is a set of concerns. You're worried that you're making the right decision, that it's the right product, the right service, that it will fulfill your desire or your objective. So linked to that also, you've maybe got some specific questions. As it says in the notes here, you want to know exactly how I can answer these specific questions and if I can do it in a way that is going to satisfy you and make you feel comfortable and confident that you're doing the right thing. So what I thought would be good is maybe to start by giving you an overview of a virtual customer engagement strategy. So sort of broken this down into 6 elements. And then today we're going to talk about 1 or 2 of these elements in a bit more detail, but it will set the framework up really for you to start asking some questions about how your organization will look in the future, but also, how you can start to implement some of these things to improve the results almost straight away. So let's have a look at some of these. So the first one is to lead with value. So if you go back to thinking about what the customer's concerns are, the information that we're going to put together and communicate to them really has to focus on the value or the outcomes, the results that the products or services can deliver to improve their circumstances or their condition. So that's a critical mindset shift, maybe. Many salespeople that I work with, they are very comfortable talking about their products. They're very knowledgeable on the technical aspects of that. And while that is obviously really important, it only really becomes important to the customer when they can see how it applies to improving their situation. So that's the first one, leading with value. The second one is looking at recreating your sales content. So what do we mean by that? Well, I'm sure you've got presentations that you've used in the past. You've maybe got documents and other content that you would have shared with people, maybe face-to-face or maybe after the meeting. So this is really looking at recreating that sales content. It's saying, if I had to make this purchase decision, what are all the steps that are involved and what content do I need to create to make that pathway logical, to make it easy to understand? So it may be that you will need some emails rewritten for your outbound marketing. It may be that you're thinking about what you're going to post on social media that would stimulate interest. It could be that as we move through the process and you have meetings, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, how are you going to collaborate? How are you going to engage in the meetings that you set up so that they're always moving forward nicely with customers? So if you can imagine in your mind, what you actually have is really like this sort of digital toolkit that allows you to maybe select different pieces of content. It might be a short 1-minute video that's like a little case study to show someone. It could be a graph or an infographic. So all of these pieces could be used to facilitate your conversations, especially when you're working virtually. And creating online opportunities. So for many of you, I know one of the big challenges is the fact that you are not doing the networking, the exhibitions, the face-to-face work that you were doing before. So how do we replicate this now that we're working maybe virtually and face-to-face a little bit as well? Because undoubtedly the future is going to be a hybrid of these two, isn't it? So we'll look at that this morning in a bit more detail. Restructuring your sales process. So this is where you step back for a minute and you start to think, okay, if I mapped out my sales process as it was before, and now that I'm going to be doing it online and maybe virtually, what needs to change? What's changed in the customer's business that I need to think about and implement into a sales process that would really help them to make these decisions? So you can redraft that. Another part is maximizing the technology. So you've got the basic things like lighting, audio, video, your background, all of these things that create a professional customer experience. Then also on top of that, you've got engagement. So can you use some of the tools that we're going to talk about this morning to create real engagement and collaboration? Things like the whiteboards, the breakout rooms, taking polls. All of these things can really help to get that engagement going. Because the challenge obviously is that a lot of people see, say, this virtual work as almost one way, just like I'm talking to you now as a presentation, rather than what it really needs to be is a collaboration. And then finally, executing and implementing these plans, because it's very different from what we've done before. Even your day-to-day life could be different, couldn't it? If you were working a couple of days from home and then you're out on the road or in the office, you need a different kind of mindset and skill set to be able to execute what you had in mind. So we took a poll just kind of before with people and looked at asking them a few questions about the challenges that you are facing with virtual selling. So I'll share this with you. So as you can see there, we looked at what the current challenges were, and the majority, by far the majority, was looking at making new connections with buyers. So we're going to look at 6 different ways to do that this morning, as well as the second one, which was finding suitable content to share. So we'll also touch on that as well today. We asked about slow decision making. So this is linked to the level of engagement that you've got with customers. And then also finally, we asked about keeping the sales teams motivated and proactive. And much of that is down to clarity of task. If people know what they need to do, then they feel confident and they can get on with it. When we don't feel that, then we tend to procrastinate and we're not quite sure which direction we're heading in. So let's have a look at this one of creating new opportunities. And you see there, I put next to that trigger points. So, you know, traditional kind of cold calling, mass emailing, these don't work. Think about it for a minute. When the phone rings and you're just about to sit down to dinner and you think, oh, is that double glazing? Is it kitchen refit? Is it I've been in a car accident? And allegedly, one of my clients said to me the other day, he said, oh, I think I've been in 6 write-offs this year already. You know the feeling that you get in your heart, don't you? Your heart sinks. I'm not even going to answer the phone because, frankly, it's an interruption. So our goal here is to stimulate interest and curiosity rather than to create tension when we're trying to reach out to people. So we need to think about what are the trigger points, the points of commonality or value that would be appropriate for us to connect with other people. So one of the key assets in this respect is maybe using something like LinkedIn or Twitter. But with LinkedIn, you can get a really good overview of all of the people that you are connected with in your network. So while that is valuable, there's another phase to this which is even more valuable, and that's thinking about your second degree contacts. So these are maybe people that you're not directly connected with, but they are closely related to people that you have a good relationship with. So maybe this is a very quick way to get yourselves referred to other people who see value in what you do. And why not reach out to some of your contacts and say, look, I'm looking to start some new conversations and expand on what we're doing. Do you think that if I contacted so-and-so, that would be a good match for me? And you can get an introduction that way. So you've got a warm connection with the person that you're connecting with on LinkedIn. So in that way, you can quickly grow your network, but also you're choosing people who you think would be inside that target audience, the people that you want to talk to, rather than just randomly trying to connect with hundreds of people, which is never really that effective. So the second one is to stay connected with your network, be part of that community. So look at who is liking your posts, your company posts online, and commenting on them. See what they're saying, because that's a huge opportunity to maybe reach out to them and say, you know, thank you for responding on the post, and maybe set up a meeting to just discuss a little bit further what they do and maybe how you can help them. So it's an exploratory, light touch conversation. Knowledge is power. So who can you help? One of the fantastic things about social media is it gives you an ability to know what is going on almost globally with all these different contacts and companies. Whereas before, you know, you might have had a meeting in one place, a coffee here, or you went for lunch and you caught up with somebody and got some information. Now you can see what's happening with inside the businesses. So maybe one of your prospective clients has just won a big contract, and they post about that on LinkedIn. So there's a good opportunity for you to maybe reach out and see if there's any way that you can assist them and help them in this regard. Again, with thinking about sharing knowledge, look at the existing content you've got and see if you can package that, maybe simplify it a little bit, and send a targeted message to somebody that adds value to them. So how would you know if it's relevant or useful? Well, why don't you just take a few days to see what they're liking, what they're commenting on, what's important to them right now. Within a few days, you can build up a picture of what might be relevant to them, and that will help you then to determine what would be the right content maybe to share with them. It might be an article that your company's written. It may be a case study that is very relevant to what they've been discussing recently. The next one looks about sharing expertise. So this is really a huge opportunity for you. First of all, you might not think that you're an expert in your field, but I can assure you, you probably are, because you're doing it every single day. So compared with people who maybe make these decisions only a few times a year or over several years. So you already know the pitfalls and the challenges. Why not try and help people to navigate that? Live case studies are quite a good opportunity to do that. You could interview somebody that has worked with you and had an installation, maybe of capital equipment, and you can talk. They can also be present and talk through it. So you could do a live case study is one idea. Maybe another thing you could think about is networking at webinars. So, you know, if you see that you look at where your audience, your target audience is gathering online, what webinars or virtual events they're attending, and then attend those. It will give you an opportunity to engage. I've also suggested here maybe having 1 or 2 questions at the end of the event that you could pose, which will help to actually make you stand out from the crowd. And offer you, you know, quite unique opportunities maybe to engage in some networking. Even if it's not at the event, you can then contact them after the event and say, you know, it's good to see you at the event. It will be great to have an opportunity to find out a little bit more about what you're doing in this area or that, etc. So you can make a connection based on something that you've both shared together. So there we have 6 different ways in which you can create these trigger points, which will help you. So now I think what would be really good is to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is your customer's mindset. So how can you work out what's in their mind and be able to help them through this process? So let me share something I found this report very interesting. It's another Gartner report, and this was all about the subject of building confidence with customers. So if you have a look at this, It's talking about the impact of information, the quality and volume on winning a high quality and a low regret deal, which is what you want, isn't it? So it's interesting that on the positive side, 26% of the people stated there that the information they encountered as part of that purchase decision was generally of high quality. So that's great. Unfortunately, 54% said the amount of trustworthy information was overwhelming. So the quality was good, but it was like a wave coming over them. 66% said that the information from the suppliers appeared trustworthy, but was contradictory. So that, in a buyer's mind, is a challenge, isn't it, in terms of making the right decision. And then the last one, 33% said that making informed trade-offs between the vendors and their capabilities was difficult. So that helps us to see what our role is, because in selling, if you think about the last 10 years or so, buyers are now in control, aren't they? They can find the information online, just like you could. If we chose any subject this morning and we said, let's go and research this, we could get all of the suppliers in the marketplace, we could get peer reviews on the products, we could get an idea of cost, we could get all of that information ourselves. We don't even need to speak to anybody in sales. But here's the crunch. Now we've got all that information and you're looking at those statistics there, you can see that it's not a simple process. We've got to make sense of all of this knowledge and information that we've got. And that's really one of the key roles that you have, is to help this idea of sense making. So the most skilled sellers here are able to navigate that maze of information. Okay, they're going to identify what are the right solutions that are appropriate for their customers. But they don't just leave it there. They also look at how can they implement them successfully. Because what is critical to this is that we don't just make a sale or a purchase and then leave it there. We want to make sure that it's fully implemented, they're getting results that they wanted and desired, and that we can keep this almost lifetime cycle going around where we re-engage with them, keep their business moving forward and support them, which is so valuable to them and to you. So, oh, sorry, let me get rid of this. Okay. So just thinking about those sellers for a minute, what are they actually doing? Well, they're keeping this really, really simple for the buyer, and they're also being professional, relaxed, and very natural about what they're doing. They're not trying to coerce people into making decisions. And they're requesting to see, rather than requiring and demanding people to make the next step. So to put this into a kind of visual or a graphic for you, here we are creating a winning path. So imagine in your mind, you're trying to help someone to go through a maze of information, and using your skill, your expertise, and your experience to help them to make those really winning decisions. So it's simply taking something complicated and making sure that you make it simple for people. So that said, I want to talk about the differences between maybe the face-to-face work that you've done in the past and also your virtual sales, because there are significant differences, but there are also advantages. So let's have a think about that. So the differences, well, first of all, there are some challenges, aren't there? I think we're all going to agree that reading body language, facial expression are so much more difficult when you're working virtually. I mean, first of all, you can only see like a quarter of the person. They may not have good lighting, so it's difficult to read facial expressions. So all of that creates a challenge. The second thing is that time is faster paced. It's very much more business agenda driven. You don't have the time to engage in some of the activities that you were before. There are less pauses. It's a very unforgiving medium working virtually. If there's any kind of issues technically, they seem to take a lot longer to resolve than it would feel like if you were in a face-to-face meeting. Natural engagement points. So, you know, when you arrive at an office, what do? Well, you meet the person, you probably have a coffee together. They might introduce you to one or two other people in the business when you arrive. And there's a really nice opportunity to build some rapport. You get an idea of the culture in the business and the environment that they're working in. All of that is lost when you're working virtually very often. So we're going to look at, in a minute, we'll look at some ways in which we can rebuild this rapport when we're working virtually. Then you also have to take a proactive lead in these meetings. You can't just leave it up to chance about how the meeting's going to run. You really need to create a professional and a relaxed structure to the meeting so that the person knows the purpose for the meeting. They know the content to be covered, but they also know the payoff. They know that if you do find some interesting points during the meeting, that you're prepared to come back and share some new content with them or set up another meeting. So we need to be proactive about creating that path that we've spoken about. So there, we've got some challenges there, that's true. But you know what? I think there are some incredible advantages for you. And I would really encourage you to think about investing a little bit of time and effort in some of these areas, because it's going to pay huge dividends for you moving forward. And some of these things, we're not talking about huge capital expense. All we're talking about is redirecting a bit of resource and time to improve in these areas. So let's have a look at some of the advantages. Well, number one is travel. I've spoken to so many people over the last year who said, I can't believe that I was driving 4 or 5 hours to a meeting for an hour or so, and then driving all the way back. Now I can do maybe 3, 4, 5 times the amount of meetings from home. And when I do have a face-to-face meeting, it's because we've got something really substantial to talk about. So that's one advantage. Collaboration is another key area we're going to look at this morning. So new ideas that you want to share with people. If you're in a face-to-face meeting, you might have some questions noted down. It's not very easy to refer to your questions when you're in a face-to-face meeting, but when you're working virtually, it is. You can have them on when you're face-to-face. It would be kind of weird there's a lull in the natural flow of the conversation. Whereas when you're working virtually, you could have all of these presentations and tools ready. You could share them almost instantaneously, and it wouldn't seem strange. And it can be much more effective in way of communicating. You'll also have the ability to save a ton of time working this way, cutting out much of the traveling and also expense. Also, working online gives you opportunity to use a lot of collaborative tools that maybe you haven't used in the past, or maybe you've used whiteboards in physical meetings, but now you can have an opportunity to collaborate with your customer live. You can be discussing different challenges they have. You can map it out together. And we're going to look at why that is so effective in a minute. Making an impact case. So maybe you want to demonstrate, return on investment for this capital expenditure. Again, these are models that you can create ahead of time that really help to explain that in simple terms, in a logical way to people. But as we said at the beginning there, one of the biggest challenges is creating rapport, because all of that normal stuff that we talked about in terms of meeting and greeting disappears. So very often when you arrive at a virtual meeting, I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but you kind of turn up and first of all, you've got to make sure everybody's off mute and it's all a little bit disjointed. And then really you just kind of dive straight into the business end of the meeting. There's no kind of niceties or getting to know the person a little bit beforehand. So let's look at maybe 4 different principles to create this rapport when you're working virtually that you can incorporate into your meetings to help you to replace some of the things that you're missing. So the first one is empathy. I think we've all felt the last year or year and a half really stressful. It's been a challenging time for so many people on numerous levels, whether it's health, finance, business. So, you know, just acknowledging that and maybe sharing a couple of thoughts with people, maybe have a few questions in mind that you could ask them about how have they been getting on, you know, what have they found has been really effective to keep fit and well mentally and physically during this time. Maybe you could ask them, you know, what they're missing most at the moment, or what they're really looking forward to getting back to once restrictions are eased up. These kind of questions are really useful to just connect with people on a personal level, because ultimately all business is a people business, isn't it? It's not a separate entity. So we want to connect with people and do that in a sincere way, which is really the second one, which is about being authentic. I think we all appreciate working with people that are authentic and genuine in their efforts. So just keep it simple, and straightforward with people. These are not techniques that you use on people. It's really just showing personal interest in them, which will, if you incorporate them into the meetings, it will allow you the opportunity to create some rapport with people. The third one is something that you can actually you need to do before you meet with anybody, whether face-to-face or virtually, but you never want to miss the opportunity of finding something that you had in common. I mean, for instance, a short look on LinkedIn will provide you with some idea of their interests, their background, where they've worked before. Imagine you probably worked maybe at an organization where they've worked before, or you know people in common. Having commonality is a huge asset to creating rapport and sparks off all kinds of conversations. And you'd never want to miss that opportunity just because you hadn't bothered to look or you weren't aware of that trigger point or that connection that you've got with them. The fourth one we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail this morning is about collaborating. And why is this so important? Well, for the very reason that we can engage, we can get a much higher level of engagement, which is what we need, which is what is actually missing when we're working virtually, is that level of engagement. So we can interact with them. So we need to incorporate into our meetings, not just a face-to-face conversation. We need to think about how we're going to use these tools to help us to uncover needs and challenges and opportunities that they're looking at, and then collaborate together to build potential solutions. And that's such a valuable asset. So there we've got 4 different aspects of creating rapport. And if we build those into the meetings as we go through, then we'll find that we have less of the kind of stop-start environment that is experienced often in virtual selling. So why is this so important, this buyer enablement, this buyer engagement? Well, if you stop and think for a minute about your experiences, if you talk to someone, if you're going to make a purchase decision, no doubt they're experienced, and I'm sure you've got a lot of experience yourself. But your success can also be a pitfall because you already know, potentially, you know the solution that's right for them, even before you've done a discovery and found out exactly. And even though you might be right, the issue is that any solutions or ideas that you're coming up with are ultimately your solutions and ideas. They're not mine as a bias. So it's critical that we have this collaboration, because as the notes say here, there's a strong sense of psychological ownership in buyers when they have been party to creating that solution. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I've done this, where superior solutions are created when you've got a really high level of engagement and collaboration. And this medium of virtual selling is great for this. So if you've got, maybe you have clients who are in Europe or maybe around the world, there's no reason why you can't create these really good solutions using some of the tools, the virtual tools for collaboration. When you do it well, it's really, really powerful. And I also like to add, it enables you to capture all of this information. So imagine that you're having this meeting. One, you can record it with their permission and say, let's record it, and then we can always look back on it. Secondly, you can record the whiteboards that you can create together. And thirdly, you can share them via document share, so that they're captured within the organization. They can be shared with other people in the organization. So instead of maybe having a face-to-face meeting and you each take notes and then maybe you follow up with an email, now you've captured that information in real time. And that can be really powerful in terms of agreeing what should be the next step and getting forward movement. Because one of the challenges that I'm seeing regularly is a slowing down of the decision-making process on the part of buyers. And you know why that is, because we already talked about it. There's a confusion there. There's a lot of conflicting information. So they're having to sort of wade through this. So if your presentations are in any way complicated, you will see this happen. I can assure you, right? You will see the brakes go on, and people will start to hesitate, and they will say, okay, maybe we need to take a bit of time out to review this and then come back. And of course, that's all too easy, isn't it, in a virtual meeting? If I travel to see you face to face, maybe we could resolve it then and there. But if we're in a virtual meeting, it's so easy for me to say, do you know what, can we just do another virtual meeting next week? And you've lost the momentum, you may have lost the opportunity. So it's a really important factor moving forward. So let's have a look at some examples of how maybe you could use the whiteboard. And before I show you sort of some ideas on this, just think about the benefit of being a bit more prepared. If I just brought up a whiteboard, it's like a blank piece of paper, and it's quite daunting for a lot of people to start working from that. But why not think about creating some of your own templates? You've probably got an idea about what the client might be interested in. Maybe create a menu of options. Maybe create an opportunity to discover where they are at the moment and then where they would like to be in the future. So just maybe a generic template that just gives you some structure to your meeting and can guide them down the path and help you as well, so you're not starting with a completely blank sheet. So let's have a look at one of those templates for a minute. So sharing whiteboards is hugely effective when you want to collaborate, and doing it like this, both parties can notate on the screen at the same time. You can work in real time, and it can mean that your collaboration is even better than maybe a face-to-face meeting in some of these situations, not all. But this is just a little generic example. You can see here I've stated, the current state, maybe challenges, but not just problems. Don't focus on just the problems. Think also about the opportunities. Sometimes there's a tendency to look at customers and think, what's broken? when actually they're very, very successful businesses, and it's much more about the opportunities that they're looking for. So we could highlight those. We could look at a new desired reality. So what are the key objectives or desires that they have now, maybe in the next 18 months? Now, how has the business changed? So why are they looking at these aspects? Why are they relevant now? Let's talk about some approaches. You see, if you come to the table with only one solution and you nail your flag to that mast, then it's very difficult for you to back down if the other party doesn't appreciate the solution. However, if you were to say, would it help you if we looked at some options and maybe list out different approaches, then it's much less threatening, and you can work together and find out which one is the right option. So don't be rushed to create the solution, which you probably have in your mind. By going along this pathway, we're creating a lot more trust. Also look at the implementation. So what potentially might block a successful implementation? See if you can highlight those things. Draw out all of those kind of thoughts or maybe negative things that are in the back of their mind. Get them to the front so that really you've covered everything, and you've done it in a really collaborative way, that they can see that this is very valuable now. So this is not just about capital equipment. This is not just about services. The person I'm working with is actually a real asset. He or she has helped me to make sense of all of that info that was coming at me. They've taken me down this path. They've created a solution that fits all of my needs. We've covered everything that I thought could be a challenge, and now I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about moving forward with them. So hopefully that's given you some ideas, a bit of an overview of how you can develop your digital sales this morning. So just to kind of go back and review what we've discussed. So in a nutshell, we looked at truly understanding your customer's mindset. So before you run out the door and start creating loads of campaigns or doing things online, make sure that you've interviewed customers and really got a good understanding of what it is they're trying to achieve and also what their concerns are before you start to communicate with them. And focus your communication on addressing those issues and showing how you can help and support them in achieving their objectives. The second one is just take a moment to understand how you're going to use all of these different digital channels. Just take a moment to think, okay, which ones are really relevant to me? It may be that some of them don't really work for your industry or your customers, and others are more ideal for you. And then think through how you're going to use them on a consistent basis. Maybe that's a subject for another webinar where we look at actually how we practically create this digital sales process. Number 3, above all, we want to keep it personal, don't we? Everybody knows that authentic relationships are not something you can fabricate out of thin air. They have to be based on common values, shared objectives, and often shared investment. So we want to make it personal and attract buyers to us because we are genuinely sharing and offering things of value to them that resonate with what they want to achieve. And then the fourth one is looking at maybe creating your profile on social media and thinking about how it demonstrates the value that you are already bringing to many people, and how you can also do that for others as well, so it resonates with them and their objectives. So that kind of concludes our session. For all of the MTA members, I wanted to just basically give you the opportunity to have a free 30-minute consultation call. If there are any topics that you want to explore in more detail or get some more information, an article, happy to do that, as well as send you a copy of the Sales Strategist, which is a complimentary copy of the book, which focuses on some of these areas that you can implement. So I thank you very much for the invitation today. It's been great to have some time with you. And now we'd love to open this up, James, and maybe answer some questions or get any thoughts and comments back on what we've been talking about.
Great stuff, Peter. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, lots to take away from there. And I think interesting you were saying about don't forget all your traditional sales methods, i.e. what does the customer want, what are you trying to get across, before sort of just diving into this brand new digital world. As Peter says, we've got time for a few quick questions. If people want to pop those into the chat, you can do so. As mentioned before, I know a few people have issues accessing that, so there is either a raise hand function, or failing that, if you want to unmute and shout your name, then we will be able to go across. But if anyone's got any specific questions or examples of recent online sales, or anything they'd like expanded, then now is your opportunity to do so. Again, just a reminder that this session is recorded, and we will send out a copy of that to everyone that's registered. And again, if there are any key areas in this that you think it would be really good to focus in on, or do an extra session on, please let us know as part of the feedback, and we can get that organised. I'm just pausing for a moment to see if anyone unmutes and shouts up.
Yeah, there are no questions.
There is one that's just popped in now that says, in your professional opinion, do virtual demo sales rooms work in driving sales? So we've had a few members who have done this. They've basically created virtual sales facilities, so you can walk around and see each individual bits of equipment. So do you think they have good impact?
Yeah, I think we spoke about this recently, didn't we, James? I think absolutely they have a real value, but I think there's two things that you've got to keep in mind. Just go back to what we were talking about, the whiteboards. It's when you introduce them. So when do you introduce the demo? Well, if you've done that collaborative piece first, then almost your demo is just a summation. Rather than it being sort of a presentation and negotiation, it's more of a summation of what you've already agreed. So, you know, barring anything being hugely different from what you've discussed and your ability to deliver it, you should find that the demo is really just confirming everything that you've already agreed. And I think we talked about this, didn't we, James? We talked about how you could use the demo in real time. Is that right, with machinery?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it with a couple of different members now who have done different approaches. So some people have created complete virtual reality 3D showrooms that you can access in your own time when you go in. Whereas what others have done is they've used their physical showrooms, but just use this medium to transfer it. So rather than going, well, here's a video of what it does, or you can click on this, it's a live demonstration just over the internet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're experts in your business, but one thing that I have found is that when you're working virtually, it's already an unnatural medium, right? As opposed to being there face to face. So the more natural you can make it, the better for your buyer's confidence. So if you're going to run a demo, it would be probably more natural and more effective if you could actually just do that. And the only difference to them standing in the factory is the fact that they're looking at you on a screen rather than maybe putting into a virtual room and then, you know, having to kind of navigate that on their own.
Sure. Appreciating we are approaching midday, and this is only scheduled for an hour. We've got a couple of minutes if there are any other questions. I'm glancing down at my phone because I've got the chat open on that one. So there doesn't seem to be anything coming through. So again, I will just reiterate, we will send out a recording of this along with a feedback form. Please can I ask that you fill that in. And genuinely, if there's any other areas or any parts of this, we might even leave a couple of options to select that you think we can cover in more detail, then please let us know.
Yeah, thanks, James. And I think also, you know, sometimes when I attend events like this, there's a lot of information that's coming at you, and you're probably going to go away when we send you the presentation or the recording, and you have a look through it. That will pique something in your mind, and you might say, oh yeah, that is something that we've been looking at, and we'd like to, you know, maybe dig into a little bit deeper. So, you know, I think sometimes when you're put on the spot at the end of a presentation, sometimes it's kind of I can't quite think of the question that I have in mind. So if it comes to you, absolutely not a problem. Just send us an email, and then we're happy to answer, you know, within the next few days.
Great stuff. Well, all that's left for me to do is thank you all very much for your attendance today, and pass on a massive thank you to Peter. It's been very much appreciated. And as I say, hopefully we'll look at doing some sort of follow-up to this on one of the areas you've mentioned today at a later date.
Great. Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And enjoy the rest of the day.
Cheers all. Thanks. Have a good Thursday.
Take care. Bye-bye now.